to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and as always, a delight to have with us Dr. Joel Klein. He is a physician with Ventana Wellness here in Medford, and that's ventanawellness.com. It's a great resource, and we're here to talk about antibiotics. But before we do, Doc,
yes,
how are you? We had quite the story this morning about the flu shot.
Right.
What's your opinion?
I think that, there have been studies that I saw, actually was researching one, that really didn't show any difference in death rates from like 1980 on, that it didn't make as much of a difference, but I think there's some controversy about that, and maybe some other evidence out there. I really don't think that everybody needs one. I think I still reserve them for the sicker patients, for people who have real potential medical complications, obviously chronic lung disease, diabetics, people who would be, if they got the flu, would be really sick, older and infirm types of people. I mean, when they talk about with kids, the thing that they found was they did miss a few less school days with the shot, but that was it. And I understand that. I just philosophically don't see pumping us all full of antigens. We save a few school days. There's still some, circumstantial evidence and all that too many vaccines are overstimulating the other side of the immune system. That may be part of why we have more autoimmune illness. There's not we don't have good proof. They're not studying it that way. But I just try to do what's really necessary, in my opinion.
It always pops up this time of the year.
Right.
Should I get the flu shot? We've talked to those who got the flu shot and got the flu.
Well, part of the thing, or did they really get the flu? I mean, all the flu shot is protecting you from is those strains of influenza A or virus that they are predicting based on worldwide patterns are going to be what causes a problem. So number one, it's a very educated guess. They may completely miss the boat on terms of what strains cause it, and it's not going to protect you from the 400 strains of rhinoviruses and things that cause upper respiratory infections, that cause all these other kind of problems. And again, we've commonly over the years called gastroenteritis stomach flu. It's not really the flu. We've just kind of used that term. So it's only protecting you against true influenza infections. So I think some of that's a misunderstanding.
All right. Well, I have never taken the flu shot. So I think I got the flu one time, and I was sick, there's no question about it, but I've never had the flu shot. I just take gallons of vitamin C.
Well, there's some things, there's actually some other products and things, or actually the nutritional supplement N-acetylcysteine. In one small study, they gave it helps increase glutathione production by the liver, which is the main detoxifying compound. And patients who took that through the winter did as well, in terms of avoiding illness. It worked as well as a flu shot. So right. I think there are ways. But if you're not going to take care of yourself, if you're going to eat poorly, if you're going to overstress, especially over the holidays, you're going to do all these things to yourself, and then say, oh, but I'm not going to, do that, then, just like everything else, I think you're rolling the dice.
All right. Well, that kind of a good segue, what we want to talk about today, and that's antibiotics. In some way, isn't the flu shot a great big antibiotic?
No, well, that's the problem. The problem, antibiotic has really become to mean antibacterial. That's the way all the drugs that we call antibiotics are really antibacterials. They're not antiviral. They're not antifungal, although antibiotic technically means against life. Okay. But what we're talking about is antibacterial agents. And obviously, this is every year, we're coming into that time of year where people do get more illnesses now. Why is that? That's another question. As I like to tell people, Louis Pasteur at the end of his life even said that it was the host, not the bug, that was the main factor in infections. So what's happening with people's immune systems? Eat, stress, physical stress of the environmental changes, weather changes and all that, and what that's doing to the immune system. But beyond the CDC warnings, and the CDC's trying to get out there, so we shouldn't be using all these antibiotics for viral infections.
Okay, so why did you select antibiotics? I mean, you're a doctor, you prescribe them.
This is the problem. I try to use them very sparingly. They are overused. People are desperate to give me something to knock this out, when most of what they have is viral infections. and then whether there's a secondary infection, how much difference the antibiotic really makes. We tried to do a small study, I remember at my residency, of whether giving people with bronchitis erythromycin really made a difference, and it was really kind of a mixed bag as to how much did it really make a difference or not. And besides the whole problem that many people are becoming more aware of creating more and more resistant bacteria, because we've been using these antibiotics for now 50, 60 years, and we have to use, way higher doses, by 10 times or so, the doses of penicillin that we used when we first were able to give it, because the bugs have become resistant. But beyond that, for me, because the factor that doesn't get advertised as much, and a lot of people who are into natural medicine know, that is what the antibiotics actually do to our bodies that's negative. And I spend a lot of my practice actually undoing the damage of what antibiotics have done to people to actually result in chronic inflammatory autoimmune and gastrointestinal problems.
Those of us, sooner or later, who have had to use them, and I just went through a series of them, and I read the page. I actually read the page. And I thought, well, why in the world am I taking this?
Well, they have to give you all that. No, actually, the main issue for me is not the life-threatening allergic reactions. We have these things, or other side effects that, are on that page. What's not on that page is the destruction of the healthy bacteria in your gut and overgrowth of unhealthy organisms that then start to promote an environment in the gut where we develop more and more allergies to foods, particularly the foods we eat every day, gluten, dairy, corn, and soy, that the allergy is an inflammatory type of allergy that then produces all kinds of inflammatory, even diseases and autoimmune diseases in many people. And that's my issue. So it's not only just the overuse of antibiotics, but if you really need them, there are things that should be done. Even with you, what we would have talked about, we still may need to do, are the use of probiotics to replace the good bacteria when we're taking the antibiotics, but there's a right way to do that because you have to separate them, and even using other medications like antifungals to help prevent the overgrowth of fungal species in the gut.
I was going to go to probiotics, but let me stick on antibiotics just for a moment. So often when you're issued a prescription of antibiotics, one of the fingers in the face is make sure you take all of it.
Right.
Why?
Because, at least when it's been studied, if you don't completely eradicate the infection, the thought is now what bugs are left are now resistant bugs, and it's going to be worse.
Oh, comes back with a vengeance.
Right, so especially like a sinus infection, and you get 80% there, but you don't get all the way. Now, what bacteria are in there that then can continue to overgrow may be more resistant to the bug. It's pros and cons, because sometimes we do overtreat and give longer courses. Certainly, a lot of times what had to do with what was medically studied back in the days when penicillin would treat the strep in order to prevent rheumatic fever. Turned out it didn't do anything for the kidney disease. It was determined at one point you needed to take a full 10-day course in order to prevent the rheumatic fever. So that's why.
Okay.
Told that.
All right. So if somebody has been on an antibiotic for a period of time, or maybe multiples, who knows, whatever the problems may be, should they go through a cleansing?
Well, it depends on what you call cleansing, but I would certainly be using probiotics. And depending, if there's somebody who doesn't have a lot of medical problems and they're actually doing fairly well, especially if they've been on multiple courses or extended courses, there are natural, what they would call candida cleanse. There are things to actually kill the overgrowth of fungal species in the gut, which is just now starting to be accepted in some circles of medicine. Some gastroenterologists are coming around saying, I think this is actually a real thing. This has been an issue since the late 80s when William Crook originally wrote the book, The Yeast Connection, making this determination that we have a significant amount of issues with overgrowth of yeast. So depending on how the person is, I don't think everybody needs to do a full cleanse, certainly, but if they've been on a lot, then some of these candida cleanses, but people tell me which one, I don't know which ones are good. My patients who actually more have multiple medical problems, I'm actually giving them prescription antifungal drugs like the same thing we give babies for thrush to help clean out their guts.
Wow. All right, let me take a break. We'll be right back. We're with Dr. Joel Klein. By the way, he's with Ventana Wellness. You can go to ventanawellness.com. It's a great resource. You're looking for a great doctor. Here's one right here. And we're going to come back and talk about probiotics. Really popular. I'm reading a lot about it.
Right, absolutely. It's even in the medical literature and other things that we'll talk about too.
And the other thing I learned about probiotics is read the label.
Yeah.
They're not all the same.
They're not all the same.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Dr. Joel Klein. He's a physician with Ventana Wellness, and we're talking about antibiotics, and now we're going to go into probiotics. If you have a quick question, we can take your phone call. The phone number to get through to Dr. Klein on the air is 541-776-5770. That's the new number to get through to the studio here, 776-5770. All right, probiotics, Dr. Klein, everything I read is positive.
Right.
Everything I read
this is why we've been using all these antibiotics for so many years. Everybody's guts are disturbed, or the antibiotics that are in our food. If we're not, if you're eating meat, or animals that have been injected with antibiotics because they grow more. It's interesting. Giving animals antibiotics makes them fat. This is why they give them. Why would one think that is? And what's it done to us, and how much is that contributing to obesity?
Yeah.
So, and they aren't giving the probiotic. Well, I think I don't know, a lot of farmers and a lot of people may be doing that now because they've realized. But if you're fattening up an animal, that's the thing, you give them an antibiotic. Another long story about metabolism, but a lot of obesity and diabetes may be, or one big part of it is the changes that happen in the gut. But the probiotics can be very important. The problem is, as we've talked about, how do you know that you're getting a good one? And I don't have a real good way of discerning that either. I work with companies that I trust. You'll hear various things out there. The studies that are done are usually done on some proprietary type of thing, typically, that the company owns obviously patents to and things like that. One of the main important things for me most of the time is, though, you want probiotics that have organisms for both the upper and the lower tracts. So everybody knows about acidophilus. Lactobacillus acidophilus is an upper GI tract organism. The lower GI tract, the main organism, are what are called bifidobacterium species. So the good probiotics, because a lot of these issues happen in the colon as well, are going to have both the lactobacillus and the bifidobacterium.
So that's something you want to look for.
Yeah, and you want, at least several billion organisms in there. Now, for really sick folks, people with inflammatory bowel disease and all that, we'll get up to 20, 40 billion organisms. And there's an expensive but really potent probiotic out there people use with inflammatory bowel disease.
Now, is this a prescription? A lot of it's over the counter.
No, it's almost all over the counter. There's one, like you said, there's VSL number 3, where the double strength form, which is like 450 billion units, can be written by prescription. Most of the time, I don't think insurance is covered anyway. But no, most of the time, this is an over-the-counter
Is there
product.
a side effect to this? Can you OD on it?
You can't OD, but some people are sensitive. Their guts are so disordered that you'd give them a probiotic and it gives them gas, it gives them problems, it gives them all kinds of other things. So you can have adverse effects from it. All that tells me is that you really have a gut that needs more serious rehabilitation, and we need to do some other work, both with diet, with some other types of supplements that help support acid, enzymes, and some of these types of things.
All right, so if you're bringing somebody off of a heavy antibiotic, should you clean them before you put them on a probiotic?
No, I tell people start the probiotic as soon as at the same time as you're taking the antibiotic.
Really?
Immediately. Okay. In fact, a lot of antibiotic, people will know a drug called Augmentin, which is amoxicillin and this clavulanic acid, famous for causing diarrhea in patients. Most patients who take the probiotic at the same time don't get the diarrhea.
Really?
The trick is to separate the probiotic dose from the antibiotic by about 4 hours. Otherwise, the antibiotic will kill the probiotic. So a lot of these drugs, if they're once or twice a day, I'll have people take it breakfast and dinner and then take their probiotic at bedtime.
Is a probiotic something you take constantly?
Some people do. Well, some people have had long-term problems. They have long-term inflammatory disease, other issues, or they have digestive issues, find that they do better, when they do. The original probiotic was yogurt that mom made fresh the night before. They've been doing it in India for thousands of years, and they learned that the health of the family depended upon this daily dose of probiotic.
Is that why the Greek yogurt is so popular now?
I haven't researched about what the Greek, I don't know how much of it is marketing, as most things in this day and age are, but certainly, from what I know from Indian culture, one of the most valuable things that mom gave her daughter when she was going off to be married and start her own family were the yogurt cultures.
Right.
Because they knew the health of the whole family depended on those.
Well, all right, so when you're looking for a probiotic and you're in the health food section, you should be looking for one that has the ingredients for both upper and lower tract.
You want the lactobacillus, the acidophilus, it'll say L. acidophilus, and now they have all kinds of other species, L. bulgaricus and some of these others, and the bifidobacterium as well.
Okay, and pretty much take what they prescribe on the bottle.
Yeah, again, unless you really, a lot of times, the problem is they're being forced because of FDA rules and all that, just to tell people one a day, no matter what the dose is. So if people who are very knowledgeable about this can do that, or you might want to talk to somebody who's a professional who knows. A lot of times people need more than what's on there.
All right, we had a caller that wants to know the difference between an antibiotic and an anti-inflammatory.
Well, antibiotics kill bacteria. Anti-inflammatories are drugs like ibuprofen, naproxen, Aleve, and those are actually supposedly treating inflammation. The connection here is what I was saying is that the antibiotics cause changes in the gut that can lead to inflammation. And actually those changes in the gut are made worse by the anti-inflammatories.
All right.
So they both can adversely affect the gut, but they do completely different things.
All right, Jean, did I help you? Did I ask that right?
Sorry, no, I didn't. I didn't expect to get the answer that quick. I was doing something else. The problem is I've had a lot of leg pain, both legs, a serious pain. I've had MRIs, X-rays, and now they say there's some bursitis and some arthritis. But I've had 4 steroid shots over the last 6 months.
You likely have food issues, these deeper inflammatory food allergies, things in your gut over the many years of being exposed to drugs, high processed food diets and the like that have caused changes in your gastrointestinal tract. I guess which camera should I be looking into?
Just talk to me.
That are causing this kind of body-wide inflammation that's showing up in different areas. So that needs to be addressed by somebody who knows what they're doing.
Right. So the original question, what's the difference between antibiotics? I've had these steroid shots, which are anti-inflammatory.
Anti-inflammatory.
Are they supposed to be doing any good or what?
They are punching out the oil light on the dashboard of your car instead of putting oil in it, and they're actually making things worse. They're helping you short term, but steroids are one of the things that make the changes in the gut worse too, so they can actually accelerate the problem over time. They're very good for short-term relief, but you pay a price.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go, Jane. I'd give them a call.
Thank you for your help.
You bet.
Thank you. Well, that's quite a statement.
Well, this is antibiotics, steroids, cortisone drugs, and birth control pills are the 3 main pharmaceuticals that disturb the environment in the gut that can create this pro-inflammatory state, and also in women in particular tends to also cause disturbances in their hormone system. And a lot of women's hormonal issues, both premenopausal in particular, but also post, come from these changes in the gut as well.
So a person like Jean, who's doing a lot of antibiotics and anti-inflammatory, is a probiotic good for her right now?
That'll be a start. My impression is that would be a good start, but for somebody like her, as I like to tell patients, it's like Roy Scheider in Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat.
Okay.
So, but that would be a start. But I think somebody like that is going to need more gut rehabilitation. They may need prescription antifungals. From my standpoint, they can do natural cleanses. They're just going to take longer. And she probably needs an elimination diet. And really starting with gluten, number 1, and like I say, dairy, corn, and soy, but gluten tends to be, now we're discovering more and more, one of the worst aggravators.
Wow. All right, so there's a good possibility people are moving towards probiotics just as general health. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah, I don't think there's a problem. The worst that's going to happen is nothing. So I don't think there's no harm in doing it. Whether it's going to help your problem or make a difference, that remains to be seen. But I don't think there's any harm in doing it.
Is there any one particular ingredient that inflames all of this? And I'm primarily thinking sugar. Is that?
Sugar feeds the bad bugs.
Okay.
So if you're already fostering the growth of these anaerobic bacteria and fungal species in particular in the gut, sugar just adds gas to the fire and helps them grow even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So the bottom line is probiotics, thumbs up. Everything I read about it's good. I'm getting affirmed here by the doctor, and I guess you could recommend to them certain brands. Yeah, we could talk about, to talk about, and you can't do this probiotic, but even in very forward-thinking medical studies and things are now looking, the ultimate probiotic is actually a fecal transplant of taking the stool from a healthy person and transplanting it into the gut of an unhealthy person to give them those bacteria. Wow. But that's kind of, I've even just heard something, they're thinking about putting it in a pill form. We'll have to see how well that goes over, but that's the importance of good bacteria and what they're finding. All right, so it's a plus. Listen, before I let you go, I'm totally off the wall here. Your thoughts on Ebola? Have you done any research on it? Not really. I think that it's something that's obviously it's a public health issue that we've once again been caught with our pants down. That was a bigger problem, and just the systems were not in place properly to deal with it in this country because we thought we were just kind of okay and all that. Now we're just realizing, oh, we really need to be more serious about this. And it is a serious disease. Oh, sure. It's obviously life-threatening. So what is it? What is it? It's a virus. Okay. But the problem is it has a 3-week incubation period. So somebody can be exposed and won't develop symptoms for 3 weeks. But it can only be spread by direct contact, and people are only infectious when they're actually exhibiting symptoms because they're shedding it in their stool in particular and all that. Again, at this point, we don't know, or we don't believe it's airborne. No, there's no evidence that it is airborne at this point. You're going to hear conspiracy theories and things like that, but at this point, there's no evidence. Well, Joel, you're a wealth of information, Dr. Klein, and again, VentanaWellness.com is a great resource if you're looking good for a great doctor who's really got the balance together. Here's one right here, and the probiotics, thumbs up, but you're basically, what I'm hearing you say, look for the one that treats the upper gut and the lower gut. Yeah, but the main thing here today is really we need to dial back our urge to take the antibiotics to treat every infection that comes our way. Right. Because that's where the problem lies. I mean, there are people who need them. You need to do the right things if you're going to take one, but most infections don't need an antibiotic. Okay. Wow. There's a statement. I just captured that one, and we'll make a spot out of it. I mean, people ask me all the time, "Do I need this?" No, but you might. You're obviously you want it, or But I would, if you take care of yourself, which most people can't afford to do, may have to take some time off work, may have to do some other things. You can get over those infections, but the problem is we're dealing with those kind of issues. Last question: the person who's been on a heavy regime of antibiotics. Start taking the probiotics. Start with the probiotics, but I probably need to, if they're having any other problems, I probably need to see them about other things to help rehabilitate their gut. Okay. Thank you, my friend. You bet. All right, and again, VentanaWellness.com. If you need to check out the website, it's a great resource, and again, that's where you can contact Dr. Joel Klein. We'll be right back. Right. As an example.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. We all watched with horror last week the high school shooting up in Washington State, Marysville, Washington. In fact, over the weekend, the third girl, 14 years old, passed away as a result of the injuries of that shooting, which now made a total of 3 people, the shooter and 2 young teenagers that have died. How does this happen? Why does it happen? and what seemingly was a very charming young man coming from a very strong traditional family, and yet something went horribly wrong. Well, with us is Dr. Gregg Jantz. He's the author of Raising Boys by Design. And of course, he'll want to explain primarily why the perpetrators of these school shootings are boys. There's a picture of the book. If you've never had a copy of it, if you're watching on the Dove TV, you may want to pick this up. It's a great resource, Raising Boys by Design. And he's a therapist and author, and explains how boys are losing touch with spiritual and cultural values passed on by an intact family where the father is present, which is pretty unique. Now, in Seattle, Washington, as we know, last week, it was an incredible thing to see happen as we watched this young man who came from an intact family and did the shooting. How did this go wrong? Well, hopefully Dr. Jantz can help us get a handle on this. And so, Dr. Jantz, are you there? Okay, I just need the audio out here so I can hear you. And good to see you again. Thank you, my friend. I know you're busy. You're probably dealing a lot with this issue. And again, your book is terrific. It's available at the bookstores. Let me encourage you to check it out. Raising Boys by Design. Well, the big question is that it looks like the shooter in this Washington State high school up there in Marysville, Washington, came from an intact family. How do you explain this one?
Well, that's a good question. Came from an intact family, but what we do know is that, you know, almost all of the shooters we've seen in school shootings are in this age profile, and many times the family at least appears to be intact. But some of these are difficult in that young men who do not have a way to deal with their emotions in a healthy way will resort oftentimes to violence. There is indication that there was bully behavior in this as well.
Really? Explain that.
Sure. We have a situation here where a young man was likely bullied. We have a situation with a girl that there was issues around the girl. Unfortunately, she was the one that died last night. We also have a situation that there was a lot in social media. There was a lot of chatter going on in Twitter and Facebook. And if you go back and begin to look at what was going on days before in social media, you saw something very significant building.
Was that bullying?
Well, there was a lot of warning signs that were happening in the social media.
This is unbelievable, and I guess again another sign. Do parents know what's going on in the social media of their children? So you say that he meets a profile. What is that profile?
Well, we have there was another what appeared on the outside as you used the word intact. Likely was not all that intact. There were issues going on for this young man that were not being dealt with. That's why I say if we go back and we look at what was going on and Twitter, Facebook, and some of the social media, we could see early on there were issues. And probably by looking at the social media, we knew more than what the parents did.
Wow. Adolescence being what it is and emotions being what they are during that time of someone's life, was there kind of like a love triangle going on with this?
Well, it could have been that, absolutely. But we know that we had a young man that there were issues related to anger and insecurities as a young man. We know that there was access to weapons. Though we have a situation where a young man had hunting experience and there was just too easy access to weapons. And we're finding these shootings, I mean, we've got an issue that's got to be addressed here. If you look at the number of shootings and if you look at the profile, these are generally young men something significant has happened that has been traumatic, and they have begun to isolate quickly from their social groups and begin to act violently.
All right, so what was the traumatic occasion of this young man? Could you pinpoint it?
Well, the traumatic was probably relationship with a girl. There was some pretty graphic and vulgar communications going on through Twitter and through Facebook.
Wow. So what are we to take away from this?
Well, one of the things we're going to take away from this, and I'm so glad that you asked, and I talk about it in the book, Raising Boys by Design, we're going to take away, you got to be engaged in your teens' world. We've got to know what's going on in social media, and we've got to decide what's okay and what's not. What's our family rules around technology? Who are the mentors who speak into the lives of our young men? For example, let's go back to the social media. Many times parents and families do not have boundaries around social media, and we've got the average exposure to pornography on the internet for young men about age 10 and 11 right now. And parents have no idea the degree of communications and the type of communications that are going on in social media.
So, are you suggesting some kind of curfews on some of this stuff?
Well, curfews, I'm suggesting boundaries, and that's one of the things I talk about. You've got to have boundaries around technology. What that means is boundaries around time spent. You've got to have kids you've got to be engaged in their world, not to sets ourselves up. Now, I have two boys, I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. I'm living this real time. And I see and I know we've got to be engaged. There's boys and there's technology. We need to also remember our young men are more slow to put their feelings into words. So there could be a lot of hurt and anger going on. You may not always see it coming out verbally with young men. This is oftentimes why, if they don't have a way of dealing with those emotions, it can, and we've seen it here, go violent and deadly.
From the time you saw the course of bullying going on with the social media to when the actual act occurred, that period appears to be short. So this thing accelerated fast. Is that right?
It was within a 3-day period. Yes, it did accelerate quickly. Absolutely.
What do you think is going on in a young boy's mind to do something that violent? I mean, where did the idea come from? Is this a copycat crime? What is it that would go that violent?
Well, two things. One is they see no other way out. So the anger and the intensity is so great. I mean, this is such an intensity that there's no other solution, and they lose rational thought. So emotion of anger, and specifically the emotion of revenge, of vengefulness, takes over, and all rational thinking goes out. They are not in what we'll call the right mind. And they probably have had a history of not really being able to process anger and disappointment, or they're used to things going their way. They may be used to bullying others. They're usually a lot of power and control issues, and then suddenly they feel powerless.
All right, so if a parent begins to see a trend in the social media of their child, what do? How do they react but not overreact or underreact?
You know, one of the things that we do, first of all, is we get in the game with our kids. We don't be afraid to talk about it. We've got to have a system, I'm going to suggest, of monitoring, putting boundaries around time. You know, if you have a 12-year-old boy, for example, what's your family rules around texting? Is it okay for them to text or have other social media contact with girls? You know, at 12 and 14 and 13 years old, they're not equipped to deal with some of the communications that are going on. You know, we've got kids 12, 13 years old, sexing, sending pictures of themselves, pornographic pictures of themselves, And this, we've got to get in there and talk about what's going on and then put appropriate boundaries in place. You know, our family, we even have something called a technology detox. And a technology detox means we take a break from technology in a day and just set it aside. We know that this idea of overstimulating the brain through intensity and technology, and I'm speaking to technology because it's almost always there and present, and there's warning signs that come out through social media. That said, we've got to get involved. The rewiring of a brain early on. You got a kid who's 6th grader, 5th grader, and they're on technology 2 or 3 hours a day. This actually, and the science shows us that we begin to rewire parts of our brain, and our brain craves more and more stimulation, which is obviously a setup later on for such things as addiction.
All right, Dr. Jantz, how do people get a hold of you if they want to correspond with you?
Well, one of the things is I've got some great information on this on the website, A Place of Hope, aplaceofhope.com. And I'm passionate about helping our kids. aplaceofhope.com, and you can get the resource, Raising Boys by Design.
All right, aplaceofhope.com. Last question, and sorry, it's probably a biggie and it deserves an hour, but give it to me in a few seconds here, and that is, if you were a counselor there today in the high school, how would you be counseling those kids?
Yes, and there's counselors today in the high school. And first of all, one of the things that we want to understand is this trauma will have an effect on their lives, whether you were there, whether you saw it or not, the fact that it happened nearby you. And I think one of the things, we've got to let them express their feelings. This could trigger for some kids some fear that something could happen again. If you've got kids that are overexposed, maybe they're in elementary school and they've seen a lot of this on the news, limit the exposure to the news. Our younger kids, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, they can't really tell if they see it on the news. They may think it's happening again or happening right now. Mm-hmm. Remember, developmentally dealing with the kids in the different levels. I also want these kids to come together as a stronger community than ever before, but we've got to hear them out. And we've got to create a new sense of safety and emotional safety.
All right, Dr. Jantz, thank you. Thanks for your time, letting us have a few moments. I know you're probably very busy these days. Again, aplaceofhope.com. Check it out, or check out his book, Raising Boys by Design by Dr. Gregg Jantz. Thank you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
You got it. Talk to you again. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Well, here we are 8 days away from the election, and you have your ballots, and if you haven't filled them out yet, trust that you will take time to go through all of the voter pamphlet and take a look at the candidates and the issues and make sure you vote accordingly. Delighted to have in the studio with us today Darlene Taylor. She is a candidate for Representative District 4, which kind of is interesting because it does take in part of Central Point over kind of a weird district, isn't it? It goes over, takes in parts of Grants Pass. Where else?
It's quite large, actually. Yeah. It's a very rural district. Central Point, White City, Eagle Point, Rogue River, Gold Hill, eastern sliver of Grants Pass, and part of Applegate. So it's quite large.
Yeah, and it's very rural. Well, anyway, thanks for coming in. Why are you running?
Well, thank you. Well, I felt there was a need, and I'm not a polished politician by any means. I have participated in legislation in Salem. I've participated in testimony before committees. I served on the Commission for Women, and I also worked on a project with the White House Council for Girls and Women. So I've had some exposure, you know, to the process, and I've worked with various legislators in Salem, and I just felt there was a need.
You got a very diverse experience, and you have a master's degree in business, is it?
My master's is interdisciplinary. It's psychology communication.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And the minor, the BS, was in business management.
All right. So, what do you think the biggest problem is in Salem? What is the biggest issue of the state that you want to solve?
There are many, many issues that we need to address in Oregon. And Southern Oregon, as you know, is quite a long distance from Salem.
Right.
So the representative needs to be consistent and strong to make sure that the voices from Southern Oregon are heard in Salem. And of course, jobs, I think, is number one. I've seen poverty in Southern Oregon that is the root of many of the problems that are being experienced here. Recently, I sat in on a 4th grade classroom, an elementary classroom locally, and I listened to a little 4th grade boy read, and he read very well. He was reading above grade level, but he was very tiny, and he was yawning most of the time. So I asked the teacher about that, and the teacher told me that 10 children out of the 30-some in his classroom got themselves up in the morning and got themselves off to school. And that was very disturbing to me. And the reason for that was the parents are working, and sometimes they're working 2 jobs.
So what would you like to do to fix that?
I am hoping that we can promote the small business development, the entrepreneurial type jobs, you know, and companies that we can get started here in Southern Oregon. There's several ways to do that. Another one is to build in the high-tech area and what I would call green jobs, and then also building within the medical community that we already have. We can have a research center where we would have research, we would have teaching, we would have seminars, we could have a convention center. So we could develop quite a few jobs and then bring in visitors also to
Now, you're big on research. You're a research analysis. You like to read all those charts that most of us don't, right?
I was a research analyst on large military projects and satellite systems. So no, I really don't like to read the charts, but I like to see the outcome from all the data and the results that could occur from all of it.
You've been involved in a lot of children's issues, clear down into grammar school, and a lot of women's issues and health issues. What's your motive there?
Well, I just think that people that are underrepresented need to have a voice. Many times the people that are disabled or like children, they don't have a voice or input into many of the things that take place that affect their lives. So they need a representative to do that for them. So I've been involved with Children First of Oregon, Oregon Women's Health and Wellness. I volunteered for the Children's Miracle Network. I've worked with SMART as a volunteer. I've been a special education advocate. So, you know, I've been involved with it for quite a while.
Now, some would say that we're very good in that area when it comes to education. A lot of funding does get into that area into the school system, and others would say not. But if you were sitting in the legislature, what would you advocate for to fix that?
Well, first of all, I think we really need to look at our educational system very carefully, because we want to make sure our children are learning the skills and the type of education that they're going to need for the future. There's so many courses now, like for instance math. I heard the other day that children are not learning multiplication tables. It's a very basic thing, but I think it's something that helps children in the future. Instead, they have some very unusual math problems, and some of that is coming through as a government, you know, required testing.
What do you think of Common Core?
I don't like it. I think that we should not have Common Core in Oregon. I think that the teachers would have to teach to the test, and it cuts out a lot of the creative thinking and abilities, you know, that the teachers have to teach children. And children learn differently. My son and daughter were very different learners. Music can be helpful. I mean, tactile learning. There's so many avenues to reach a child and to help them learn what they need to know.
Charter schools?
Charter schools are interesting because they do fill a niche, and I do see where children can grow in many of those schools. The concern that I have is on the financial side. If they're pulling money out of public schools, how is that affecting the children that are going to the public schools? So we need to have a serious evaluation of how the dollars are being spent and what we can do that would best benefit, all the children.
A couple of the big issues on the ballot are, Darlene, are Measure 91, marijuana. Where would you be with that? The legalization of marijuana?
Legalization of recreational marijuana, I am not for that. And I know a lot of people say, well, you're going to gain tax money off of this marijuana, and it's going to relieve the court system and so forth. But we need to look at Colorado and California and other states and Washington State that have had some experience with that and see the pluses and the minuses. And right now it looks like there's more minuses to that type of program.
The other big issue is GMO, the Measure 92, the labeling of GMO. Where are you on that issue?
I'm in favor of it, and the reason is I have friends in Europe and they have had labeling for many years. And if it's done correctly, it can be very beneficial to the public. So they know what's in the food products that they're buying.
Cover Oregon's been a mess, been embarrassing. It's been a total loss. Mm-hmm. We haven't signed up one person. Mm-hmm. What would you do as a legislator in that area? How would you like to see that turned around?
Well, first of all, we need to get the money back from Oracle. Whatever funds that we can recoup from that. I'm a very conservative person when it comes to fiscal management. And I think that we need to spend our dollars wisely. We have elderly, we have people with dementia and Alzheimer's, we have people that have long-term disabilities that need to be addressed. So we need to make sure that people are receiving the care that they need.
The budget is always a tug-of-war for the funding of K through 12. It becomes the political football during a session, usually held over to the end. And there's been times where that's been the first thing that's been funded. Do you think there's enough money in K through 12?
I think there's enough money. I think that we need to look at how the money is handled. How many administrators do we have? I was quite shocked when my son was in high school. He's 25 now, but a few years ago I went to visit his high school. And there was a principal and there were several vice principals. And in my mind, there weren't that many students to have 3 vice principals. I mean, there's a huge amount of money there for employee expense.
One other issue in education, I noticed in some of your literature, you've been very involved, clear down into grammar school with students and even sex education at those levels. What's your thinking on that?
My thinking on sex
well,
education?
Some of the groups, I'm trying to think of some of the organizations, forgive me because I read through them pretty fast, of the various organizations you're part of where they do sex education clear down to 4th and 6th grade, or at least they're advocating that. That seems to be a little young, but I don't know your thoughts.
Well, I'm a conservative in that area too, but I think that we have to be realistic. And with the social media as it is today, which I don't really care for.
You don't have a phone?
I have a phone. I don't twerk or tweet or any of those things, but I think that information is and knowledge is power. And we have to help protect our children, but yet I want to preserve the childhood as long as possible. And unfortunately, the children are inundated with so many, images and words today that, frankly, I really didn't even know until I was a senior in high school. So I think that the times have changed pretty dramatically, and we have to address it to protect our children.
Okay, we're out of time, but how do people get a hold of you? In other words, the time is short, the ballots are out, maybe some people have already voted, but those who haven't, how do they get a hold of you?
I have a committee. It's called Committee to Elect Darlene Taylor, P.O. Box 3973 in Central Point, Oregon, 97502.
Okay,
and
we have that here. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, good to see you.
It.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.